Oh, yeah. I
That's
mean,
not a
brutal.
guy who's just, listen, if you could move 4 or 5 on the incline at all, I don't give a shit what muscle groups you're using. You're a freak. Like, I
Use your
don't care.
calves for all I care.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care, dude. I mean, that's, that's, if you,
Welcome back to the Iron Road Podcast. I am Ian DiGiacomo, along with my co-host Eric Prush. Eric, what's up, buddy?
I'm a man who's trying to find some sort of peace, calm, and meaning in an ever-decaying geopolitical situation, looking for fun and meaning in the small things in life, while pretending that the world is not on fire. And I find
Well
those
said.
things with family, with fitness, while still being a responsible man and paying very close attention to the world situation. I believe an intelligent man should be, a virtuous, intelligent man should be a worldly man. Okay. However, one must not let what is going on somewhere else affect their ability to take action in the here and now. And I've been guilty of that in the past. So thankfully, training's been keeping me grounded. And as you know, dude, kids keep you busy, right?
Yes.
So
And happy.
you can't get lost down the same rabbit hole maybe you could have when you were 21 and you could have stayed up till 2 a.m. reading about, Zionist co-option of your government. At some point, your kid's going to shit his pants and needs his diaper cleaned. And it's going to pull you out of that,
Yeah.
But tell you what, thought you'd find this funny. I finally bought a pair of new knee sleeves.
Nice.
I've been looking for my old knee sleeves forever, and I refuse to believe that I would have thrown them out. A quality pair of SBD knee sleeves.
No, you just lost them.
I refuse to believe that I would have thrown them out. Of course, I've moved both. Like, I had a gym that I owned. We moved from one gym to another. Had a house. I'm sure it got lost in the transition. So I go on the SBD website, SBD knee sleeve, squat, bench, deadlift, and I look at their measuring chart for sizes, right? And it's like, all right, measure. And I got an issue with you, SBD, because of this, by the way. This is very silly. So they're like, all right, measure your knee, like the circumference of your knee or whatever. Okay. So I measure my knee and it's like 16 and a half inches. So I go and I buy like a large sized knee sleeve. And I was like right on the edge between large and extra large, but I was like, you know what? I'll get a little bit more compression this way. I don't mind having a little more compression. No big deal. The knee sleeves come yesterday and I realized what they should have told you to do was measure your calves, because I couldn't get that knee sleeve on over my calf because my calf is 18 inches.
Interesting.
So
your calf is wider than your knee?
Yeah, the circumference is just bigger. I just literally could not get my the knee sleeve on over my calf. And like,
That sucks.
maybe if I had like talcum powder and like friends, like actual help, I could have gotten it on. But that's not what I'm looking to get out of this shit. I'm looking for a pair of sleeves that I can get on and go do my belt squats and my leg extensions and my other stuff. So now I got to exchange it, which, whatever, not a huge deal. But I remember thinking to myself, like, years ago, I remember the calf being a limiting factor now that I think about it, when I first invested in a pair of knee sleeves. And obviously, someone buying knee sleeves is going to have above average calf size. You would think.
Not always.
Generally,
Not always.
You don't think so? All right, fair enough.
I don't know. Calf size is very genetic, I think, and very very varied person to person. Some people have massive quads. Remember, like our friend Mark, he had very scrawny calves.
Yeah,
he's one of the pound for pound strongest people we ever trained with.
This is true.
There's not slight against him. Just calves are calves sometimes. But I find that when I train calves, cause I never train calves because I have decent sized calves anyway. I find when I do train them, the soreness from calves is more crippling than any quad soreness.
It's really bad.
When you can't articulate your ankle because you're so sore, your walking just goes away. Like, you look like a freak.
Yes.
Like you're just hobbling or waddling basically. So I want to get back into calves because right now, Eric, I feel like I'm on a generational run with my training. I've been dieting flawlessly. I've been losing about a pound of body weight, or a half pound of body weight per week. So I'm getting leaner. I feel still full. I don't feel flat. My training has been fantastic. I found that bodybuilding gym that I told you about. I have this newfound not that I ever lost it, but a newfound appreciation for training. And I'm trying to find times in the week, like tonight, I'm going to go do legs at 9 p.m. because they're open till 11.
Hmm.
So it's time where I'm not interrupted by my family and time where I can just get lost in the work and just
Hmm.
continue to train. So I'm really pumped about it. Um, I've been doing the belt squatting that you've been doing as well. So I've been taking a page out of your book. Really feels good. They have some cool, unique leg press pieces, like that horizontal leg press that's individual leg.
That's
That's like
awesome.
almost like a pendulum. They have the pendulum squat. They have just some really badass equipment that I've been just diving into, and it's been firing me up lately. So the change of scenery, people, change of scenery can help you. So if you're getting
Oh
stale with
yeah.
your current routine, if you're training at home and it's getting boring, experiment, explore some local gyms because, I have a badass garage gym, which is decked out, but sometimes you need a little change of scenery to light the fire under your ass. So keep that in mind when your things get stale.
I have been doing calves first, pretty much. And I
Okay.
don't generally train calves, actually.
Yeah.
I've always had very good calves genetically. And it's funny, like the old bodybuilder standard is your calves and your upper arms should be the same size. Like my
Hmm.
calves blow my upper arms out. Like
Is that right?
they
Yeah.
always have, yeah.
Okay.
Always have. But granted, I did a lot of glute ham raises back in the day, which definitely can help grow calves. Like, there's not a question that
Sure.
that contraction of like the rectus femoris, the leg bicep, is definitely going to build some calves. Uh, but the thing with training calves, and if you do them the Dante Trudel way, which is basically like one set with like a very long stretch at the bottom, is I just find that it opens up the ankles better for squatting.
Interesting.
So like,
Okay.
first of all, I also know myself, if I go hard enough on the real stuff, squats, deadlifts, whatever, I'm gonna be so wiped I'm not gonna do calves at the end.
Yeah.
I do like the only way I would care about it would be if I was competing in bodybuilding, which I'm not, where it's like you
Exactly.
could lose a show because your calves are small. So like,
Yeah.
but I do notice the days that I do calves first, and it doesn't have to be crazy. Like yesterday, I supersetted calves with my belt squats just because the hack squat machine is right next to the belt squat machine. And so I
Nice.
was just getting into a deep stretch on the hack squat and then kind of pressing up. I didn't go heavier than a plate. And
Okay.
it's really, my knees feel today 5 times better than they would have felt if I didn't do them.
Hmm.
Like I noticed noticeably, I feel better. But it does also, and I'd be curious to know your opinion on this. One thing that's interesting is calf training. I think, and this is a bold statement, but I believe this to be true, is the not the one implement. It is the implement in which the average person uses way too much weight and is not nearly as strong as they think they are. Like
Yes.
like
Yes.
I have very good calves relative to someone who's put the time in that I haven't put in, or really relative again, it's all genetic. I'm not saying I earned it. It's like saying I have a giant head. I do. I didn't train my head. I was, like I have a giant head.
You were
It,
blessed with a giant
it is
head.
what it is. Okay. But like just yesterday, my partner and I were doing, sets of 6 to 8 on the hack squat for our calves with one plate on each side. And if you really get a stretch, and if you really get up on the ball of your foot, dude, you can't use a lot of weight. And you feel how your ability to fully contract that calf and get on your toes, it is taken away from you almost immediately. Like if
Body
when
weight
you,
is
yes,
brutal.
yes, it's really challenging if you
Even
know.
like single leg body weight is like
Yeah,
enough for most people
that's
forever.
I actually totally agree with you. Yeah, for the average
Yeah.
person, if you just did like, you have a squat rack and you just like stand on the outside rim of your squat rack, hold a dumbbell in one hand and do a single leg, dude, that's enough for 5 years of calf training.
Easy.
Yeah,
Easy.
it's so challenging, and which makes it so funny when you see a guy like loading 250 plus pounds on a seated calf raise, which you're even weaker in. Okay.
Yeah.
And then like putting plates on top of his legs and like just bouncing out of the bottom. And you're like, dude, your calves look like shit. You look like an idiot. You look like
It's
an idiot. Okay. At
those,
what
yeah.
point do you look in the mirror and say, maybe this isn't working? It's like that story I told you, the skinny kid, when I went to the gym, the rare time at peak hours. And again, dude, like I have very good lower body development, again, relative to someone my age, my experience level.
Sure.
And like, back when we were training together, my legs were as big as 30, 31 inches. Okay. Like I wasn't shredded, but I had huge legs. Okay. And I'm like, and even today, I'm very proud of my wheels. And I'm waiting to get on a leg extension machine. And there's some skinny kid going nuts on the leg extension. And I come over and he's got the machine racked like 210 pounds or whatever on a leg extension. And, he's has the machine set up in such a way that every time he goes into the stretch, the machine just clanks down on itself. So there's not even any tension on the muscle. And he sees me sit down and put it to like 110, 130 pounds and get it set up right. And he gives me a look like, oh, yeah, I'm the man. And it's like, look at your legs and look at my legs. What's the purpose of this? We're
Yeah.
not training for the leg
Watch and
extension
learn.
Olympics. We're not,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
isn't like, oh yeah, I did a leg extension with 500 pounds. I'm now a millionaire. Like no one cares about that. The whole
Nope.
point, it's like the same thing as curls. Like I've seen guys with incredible arms curl not that much weight.
Yep.
And there's always a guy that's trying to put like 185 on a barbell and curl it. And their arms are never bigger than 16 inches.
Because you know what, Eric, the layman, the average gym goer, the civilian, as we call them, will think that moving more weight from point A to B is all that matters. That's if I move more, because even many of the fitness influencers, excuse me, will say that make sure the weight's going up every few weeks or which is there's some validity to that. But for physique work, the weight is much less important. Right, the mechanical tension you build in, the pump, the nutrition side of things play a much bigger role than how much weight is on the bar. So to circle back to your earlier point, calves and calf machines are the perfect ego lift, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not really risking anything, right? If you try to ego lift with a barbell squat, yeah, come talk to me now, because you're risking your life. You're risking
Yeah.
decapitation. You're
Yeah.
risking, quadriplegic.
Okay.
So, with calves, what can happen? You can't lift it, so you have to pull the handles, and then you rack it. Like there's very low stakes for calf training, very, very heavy. But for the most part, yeah, people don't realize that you can get much more physique development with more range of motion, more stretch, more mechanical tension, more, that mind to muscle connection that most people just don't. They just want to get it from here to here. They
Yeah.
want to get the knee extension to the top and to the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's shocking how much people don't know. I think that's the hardest part about watching people train that don't know what they're doing. It's like, if only I could just, like in the Matrix, like just program everything that I know into your head so you can not be an asshole for 6 years and not make any progress. So,
Well, dude,
that's the hard part about watching people. That's the only thing I'm grappling with going back to a normal gym is I have to watch people train now. And that's really like a big pet peeve of mine because I just can't. It's like a tick. I just can't watch it without having to try to intervene, but I don't because I'm not trying to do that at this gym.
there's always positives and negatives, right, to every situation. And to your point about like progressive overload, like I am obsessed with progressive overload.
Yeah.
But like I
No.
tell every client that I take on, there's caveats here. Like progressive overload with consistent technique, tempo, and rest
Sure.
periods, right?
Sure.
So like if I teach you as a cue, say on the chest press machine, to arch your back to get a deeper stretch and to get more pec, like that means that's how we do it forever unless otherwise specified. We don't
Yep.
change that technique just because you're stalling. Okay. We don't do
Yes.
that. Okay. If you're benching
Yes.
for a big chest, I don't want to see you, change your grip to an area where you have more mechanical tension or rather better leverage because you're stalling. That's not how this works. If we're
Yeah.
trying to get your legs bigger, okay, and your quads suck and we're doing narrow stance quads, I better not come in and see you doing a wide stance squat and basically just hinging the weight up with 150 more pounds. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay.
Yes.
If you're a power lifter, sure, be my guest. Move the weight from point A to point B. But
Exactly.
obviously in that situation, it will still require mechanical tension in your assistance lifts. You'll still have to realize,
Yes.
oh, my triceps are weak. Let me do this movement in such a way that I work on my triceps or my lats or, whatever, right? So like you said, most people don't understand that. And that's why in some cases I look at certain bodybuilders, not all, but certain ones. Again, Dorian Yates comes to mind as having some of the more impressive feats of strength. I always go back to Dorian's 405 for like 10 incline barbell press with perfect technique, chest dominant. Like,
Oh yeah, I
that's
mean
not a guy
brutal.
who's just, listen, if you could move 4 or 5 on the incline at all, I don't give a shit what muscle groups you're using. You're a freak. Like, I
Use your
don't care.
calves for all I
Yeah,
care.
I don't care. I don't care, dude. I mean, that's if you see
Yeah,
someone doing that in person, there's a chance that's the strongest person you'll ever see in your life. Let's just be honest, compared to what you can run
yes,
into on a day-to-day basis. But to be doing that with perfect form, locking out every rep and emphasizing the upper pectorals, that is an incredible feat of strength. Okay.
absolutely,
But that's a
absolutely.
guy who understood exactly how to get what he needed out of every single movement. And it
Yeah,
takes a really, really long time. And especially with barbell stuff, there's a lot of politics involved in barbell lifts. Okay. That's sometimes
sure.
why beginners sometimes also can benefit from machines, because the machine makes it a little harder to fuck it up and to politic your way to the top. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh, Granted, barbells, we love them. Everyone should learn how to use them.
of
But
course.
yeah, I mean, people, they do stupid stuff. And I agree, calves are really the number one, because it's like you said, there's no risk of injuring yourself, like none. You just like pull the
Low
pin,
stakes.
or if it's a seated standard calf raise, you just kind of shrink down under it because the machine's going to stop. It's not going to
Sure.
be not going to cut your head off. Uh, it's like you said, it's low stakes. And yeah, another one, by the way, so I would say number one ego lifting machine is calf raise. I think number two, dude, and I've never asked your opinion on this, is the decline barbell bench press.
Oh, I hate it. I hate
Dude,
it.
that has got to be in my gym the machine or exercise that I see the highest percentage of stupidity on, because
Yeah.
you could always bench, generally you'll bench more weight on the decline than you will certainly on incline, and usually on flat bench. And I see dudes do stuff on that implement every week, every day. Or I don't interject anymore, but I look at it and I'm like, man, I hope that I wasn't that way. Like, just crazy, like hopping
Yeah.
the air
Well,
while their feet are obviously connected in the foot pad, like just nonsense. Like you're gonna die. Like, almost always, like to the point of where they're gonna misgroove it and it's gonna get over their face and they're gonna be trying to do like a skull crusher with 205. Newsflash: if you can't decline barbell bench 205, you ain't doing a skull crusher with it, pal. Okay. That's going
yeah.
through your face into the floor. Okay. 0% chance you lock that thing out. Okay. So,
Yeah.
that's got to be the number two stupid movement that I see.
Agreed.
It's all the
Agreed.
time. Uh, it's never, you don't usually, and then number three might be leg press. That's a very
I think
abused
I
one
think
also.
that might be higher in the probably, so because since it's so common, it might be number one on the actual list
Fair,
of
fair.
you know
Okay.
machines that people think, because they'd rather leg press 8 plates on each squat on each side than barbell squat 185, right? And if we're being honest, most people who squat 185, you know, they can leg press 8 plates. So what's better? What looks better in the gym? If you're trying to feed your
It's
ego,
true.
what looks better? And if you want to make some girls impressed, you want all these plates. You want to, fill up both weight horns with all plates, because you can come down 8 inches and go back up again. Whereas I think the barbell squat, like you said before, everyone should learn it because it's very humbling and it's a true test of strength. Where I don't think the leg press is really a strength builder per se for most people. It's more of a quad builder, hypertrophy tool, but primarily an ego tool.
Well,
So if you
dude,
can check your ego at the door, and there's one main point I want to make here is there's a fair amount of overlap between strength training and hypertrophy training, like muscle building, physique training. There is overlap. You're going to have to move more weight over time, yes, but for the most part, you're going to have to, kind of give up some of your strength pursuits to get the best physique possible, because in all honesty, you're going to have to move the weight slower, more controlled, with pauses, with stretch, with much deeper range of motion for the best physique possible. Like, I keep hearing this story over and over again. People who barbell squat, the quads do grow, but then they stall after a while, and they don't get the quad growth towards the knee, down towards the kneecap. I've been doing these really, really deep hack squats and, getting the knee extension as far back as it'll go underneath the seat, and the sissy squats, which are brutal. And I'm finally seeing, after 20 years, dude, finally seeing growth of quads around my knee, and they're starting to like basically consume my kneecap, which I love that. So
That's
that's my
also how
rant.
you make your legs look freakish, because the bony structure of the knee, in contrast to the large quad, like, it gives you the illusion of having bigger legs than you really do.
Yeah,
Like, I've always
yeah,
had very large adductors and, like, we'll say upper quads and hamstrings.
yeah.
And again, as a power lifter, I mean, dude, when we trained together, we didn't even have access to a leg extension. That
I know.
wasn't a thing. They
We
wasn't
did
even there.
in my gym,
Well, yeah, but not
plate
at
loadable.
Gaglione, at our
No,
first one. It wasn't there at all.
that's true.
Um, but I'll tell you another machine that I like, and if you train at a gym that's like mine, that's got a lot of posers, it's gonna become part of your training because it's always open. It's the hack squat. You can't fuck around in a hack squat, dude. You'd have
Yeah,
to cut it like really high, but that's about it, because you're locked in. You can't,
yeah,
you like, once you get deep on that thing, it is all quads to the finish. And if you don't
yeah,
have
dude.
it, good night, bro. Like, it's like good night.
Or the
The other
pendulum squat.
Yeah, the other day, my
Pendulum
partner and
squat is
I,
so terrifying.
we wanted to do leg press, just because we haven't been able to do it, and we have, it's, there's always someone there, okay, and it's like, okay, let's work something in, and lo and behold, it's packed. We wind up doing the V squat machine instead, which for some people is also a little scarier because you could actually get stapled there, but they don't do it correctly anyway.
Sure.
But the point is, the hack squat is almost always open, generally speaking. You know what time it's not is if there's too much of a line on the leg press.
Yeah, I know.
Otherwise, everyone is ducking the hack squat machine, because it's just like there's no way out. There's no,
Yeah,
hey, can I change the muscle recruitment? I mean, there's just not happening. It's not a thing. Now, I will say, I'm loving the gym that I'm training at. They obviously have pretty much all hammer strength equipment from A to Z. Like,
nice.
clearly they outfitted it from hammer
Ah,
strength,
love that.
but they just don't have enough leg machines.
Yeah.
Like, there's only one seated leg curl, which I want to talk about in a second, one lying
Okay.
leg curl. There's two leg extensions, uh, two Smith machines, one leg press, one V squat, one belt squat, one hack
Yeah.
squat. Okay.
Limited.
And I do like the idea of having more, well, I guess we'll say, compound movement leg machines. I do think that really
Yeah.
matters. I think it's super, super beneficial. And the pendulum squat is becoming more popular. It used to be something that you only saw on the internet in like a really hardcore gym, but
Yeah.
more and more people are starting to popularize it. Influencers are using it. And I'm still trying to stay away from loading my spine right now, because right now I'm pushing my training good, dude. Like, I'm getting stronger every session. I'm putting on size. I was 232 yesterday. And
Nice.
like, but I feel okay. Like, I've been training jujitsu again. Whenever I load my spine, my torso just gets so much more rigid that inevitably I hurt my back on the mat.
Ah,
And so
got it.
I'm consistently looking for ways to train my legs that don't involve even a Smith machine.
I know.
And it sucks. I love the Smith machine's narrow stance squat. It's
Me
actually one
too.
of my favorite quad building exercises, because you're so locked in.
With
You
a
could
slant
almost
board.
Yes, you could push your back almost like into the implement, so
Yeah.
you can get your torso way more upright than you ever would. It's the perfect
Yeah.
combination between a bodybuilding and powerlifting movement. But guess what? I'm still doing over 4 plates on it, and it catches up to me. It's
Yeah.
not. It's just when you have one area of expertise that rewards rigidity through the muscles of the torso, and one that does not, you have to make a decision so you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
And
Fair enough.
that's why I've been sticking with machines that hit the legs but avoid loading the spine. I miss doing the squats, but I wish I had access to machines like the pendulum
Yeah.
squat, like other hack squat machines. Because, like we said last time, a little change of an angle here and there on these machines, it's not even close to the same exercise.
Massive difference. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, massive difference. You ever tried doing some of the compound stuff at the end? So like when you're already toast, so the weight on your axial skeleton can come down a little bit. Like, for example, if my back's bothering me a little bit, I'll do the Smith machine squats at the very end of the training session because my legs are already fried and the weight will be half of what it would be normally when I'm fresh. So
Yeah,
it can.
I'm just scared. I won't lie to you.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
scared. When it
All
was
right.
a week of barely being able to move, followed by 5 weeks of very limited training, it's like the risk reward is not there for me. Now, to be fair, um, I have trained that way in the past, and I actually love training that way. And usually, the only downside to that is when I know that like my bilateral, knee dominant movement is going to be the last movement of the day. I go like suicide hard.
Nice.
Because I know I'm done. There's no pacing yourself. It's like
Exactly.
I like
Yeah. What are you
I'll do
saving it
like
for?
I'll do a 6 to 8 set of 6 to 8 at 0 to 1 reps in reserve, a set of 12 to 15, 0 to 1 reps in reserve, and a set of 20, and I'm destroyed. Okay,
Toast. Toast.
destroyed. But yeah, you do that first, and then you got to do hamstrings and calves and abs, dude. You're like using a very small percentage of the weight that you could have used, and mentally you're out of it. And that might be one of the differences between me and you. And I mean this as a compliment.
Yeah.
Being more intense, which I am, has its benefits, but it does mean that you've got a limited amount of training capital to play with.
It's
Because
true.
once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. And so like for me, if I'm gonna do a Widowmaker set on squats after doing a heavy set of 6, like I'm basically doing a set of 12 and then 8 1 rep maxes. Just
Yep.
breathing. And
Pretty much. Yeah.
that's what it turns
Rest
into for me.
pause.
And it works really, really well. And
Yeah.
I love that insanity of it. But then like it takes my soul out and I don't get like good results because I just spent way too much capital up front and now I've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So like at a certain point, training, we've said this before, is you have to figure out like kind of who you are and then kind of base your training like around your personality to a certain extent. Like so many bodybuilders who are not intense, like, Jay Cutler or something, you see them be very methodical in the gym, right? And your training should always mimic your personality, right? Whereas
Mm.
guys who are intense, they're gonna do something crazy and they're probably gonna get the hell out of the gym.
True.
You just can't keep that up, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up, Ian, is you see that a lot in the martial arts world. My instructor always used to tell me, like, once you know jujitsu, if you watch a guy do jujitsu, you could already tell what kind of person he is by his
Hmm.
style and what he does on the mat.
How aggressive or not
Assuming
or
the guy's healthy. Yeah, if someone's injured and they can't train what they want to train,
sure, sure.
whatever. But he's like, you literally could tell, and I agree with him. You could see someone's personality come out on the mat, and I think that's also true in training. And I think if you fight that your nature for too long, you probably won't like training as much as you should. And I think
Maybe.
that's important. I'm not saying you shouldn't try other stuff, but at a certain point, like we said, the best program is the one you'll actually do,
That's right.
and it's the one that rewards or amplifies your own nature and what you like about training.
Yes. For me, I have to change the intensity based on the demand. So, for example, if I'm going to be squatting really heavy, 1 to 3 rep, you know, sets, the music is different. It's Ramstein,
Oh
it's
yeah,
Static X, it's Rob Zombie. It's something really angry and intense because I need to take myself to a different place for that. And then if I'm going to settle in for a 90-minute to 2-hour leg session where I'm doing just a lot of reps and just basically soaking in the fatigue burn, the visceral burn sensation of your quads or wherever, I have to take the tone down, like the whole mood of the session down so I can last longer. So, you know, I have the free switch to get the 1 rep max done if I need to, but I think that's how you operate for most of your session, which is where we differ most. Is you come in intense, you train intense, warm up sets are intense, work sets are intense. Every exercise you have this like kind of you dialed in mentality. And you don't really taper back, so you can get in and out probably a little quicker than I can, but I tend to linger and last longer in the session and just I like to get lost in the work. Like I've never had a runner's high. You're a big cardio guy. So people say, oh, the runner's high, feels so good. Your mind releases. I've never had that. I hate running with all my body. I hate running with a passion. I cannot do it. I hate the sensation. I don't find it valuable for me. And I've never achieved that runner's high. But the high that I get from a long, luxurious, uninterrupted training session is unparalleled. I'd say it's one of my
yeah. I
favorite
mean,
things to do.
it's similar to what you would get from a run, and even dude with jujitsu, like I've got some training partners that are like, yeah, every Sunday I come to open mat and I do like 12 rounds, dude. I do 6 rounds. I'm done.
Got it.
Maybe 8. Okay.
Okay.
It's I remember one of the pro wrestling books that I read back in the day. One of the wrestlers was like, got a piece of advice from an old head, and he was like, listen, nothing nothing good in this industry happens after 3 o'clock in the morning. Get your ass out of the bar and be
Yeah.
back in your home. Like, nothing good comes
Yeah.
after 3
Fair
o'clock in the
enough.
morning. For me, nothing good comes after around 8.
Okay. That's
Every
fair.
time I get hurt, it's round 9. It's
Yeah.
it's above what I said I would do for that day. And truthfully, every time I've gotten hurt in training, generally speaking, or dinged up, is like when I thought I was done and took an extra set. Because
Yeah.
once your brain is checked out, it's over, dude. There's no
Yeah.
there's a certain level of steam that gets let off, and you can't get back up to that level again, and then you get hurt.
Yeah.
But for me, I like to get in and out quick. I like to be really high and then really low.
Yeah.
I don't like to linger in the middle. I want to work really hard. This is even true in life. I want to work really hard for 4 hours a day. Psychotic meth fueled work, okay? And then I want to relax for the rest of the day,
All right.
okay? I don't want to do 8 hours of steady work. I want to do like drug induced fever work, okay? And then I want to literally pass out and enjoy the rest of the day with my kids. That's how I've always been. It's like
Okay.
when someone's like, "Oh man, I wish I could train 3 hours a day." I'm like, "You're smoking crack." I know you wish you could do that, not me. Okay.
I do.
I wish I could
I
show
do.
up
Yeah.
with a maniac, okay, and go berserk for like 90 minutes and then go home and go to sleep.
It's a long
That's what
session, 90
that's what
minutes,
I
though.
agreed. You know what I mean? But that's also like taking into account setup and breakdown and
All right.
everything else. Like,
Sure.
it's not consistent. It's like when I used to train with you when you did strongman. The workout might last 3 hours. Maybe an hour of that is lifting. So
Oh,
much,
sure.
so much
Maybe.
breakup. Yeah,
Maybe.
like the
Oh, yeah.
implements, working up
The
on the implements,
warm-ups.
assembling the implements, putting the tacky on, the belt, the wraps.
Oh, my
It's
God.
it's yeah, exactly. Like at some point, it's like you look at powerlifting and strongman, and you're like, the reason why people get out of the sport is just the workouts are logistically so long that you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna body build.
Yeah. Dude,
It's so
I
much
went
less time to body build. You know what I mean?
I went last night to this bodybuilding gym, Raw, and I got most of my quality work done within 45 minutes. And then I did
Awesome.
some extra accessory work, triceps, delts. But my chest session was about 45 minutes long, keeping the rest periods to like 45 seconds and just, getting 8 to 15 for most sets. Dude, brutal. I was toast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, people who are training, I'm in the gym for 3 hours a day, like you said, how much of that is quality work? How much of that is real, effective work? And how much of it is junk volume? Like I might fall victim to the junk volume, trap because I just want to stay and lift more. But for me, what I've noticed in my two cut cycles where I was leanest in my life, I did longer weight training sessions. And maybe it was junk volume, maybe it
You're just burning more
was to my
calories.
detriment.
You,
Exactly. It
you, you
was maybe to my
probably
detriment,
you could have gotten the same results if you lifted and then walked on a treadmill afterwards, dude.
but I
But
would
you
rather
wouldn't do it.
lift more.
But you wouldn't do it. So
Exactly.
that's the
Is
thing.
bingo.
But I will say this: I do believe that mentality taken to the extreme, which you don't do, has a lower ceiling of success than what I just said. Meaning that, like, I think a big part of the reason why 70s bodybuilders, and again, I'm never going to sit here and say that there's a linear one or the other relationship, right? When we ask the question, why were 70s bodybuilders not as lean as 80s bodybuilders, right? The generation that immediately followed. It's a pie chart, and a certain percentage is going to be one thing and another thing, and it
Sure.
adds up to, hey, the guys in the 80s were leaner, okay? Part of the reason was that there was no cardio machines. So the only way they could burn calories was to lift more weight. Okay. The problem
For
is that
longer.
for longer, yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. The problem is that a lot of them stopped stimulating as much of the fast twitch fibers as they used to because they switched to sets of 15 and 20, and the actual bigger fibers just reduced in size. Okay.
Interesting.
Whereas once the 80s came around and treadmills and exercise bikes had been mass produced, then you were able to go in and lift and then do cardio and depend on that for the calorie burning. Okay. The
But
other
couldn't
thing
you
is,
argue? Go ahead,
Keep going,
please.
keep going. No, I have another point that I want you to hear what you have to say.
So couldn't you argue that the say 45 minutes of walking for your, especially for your quads at least, would stimulate lower twitch, slow twitch fibers and kind of gear you towards more adaptations there?
Not necessarily. So there has been studies on this that show like the reason why your legs get flatter when you do cardio, assuming that you're not eating like an idiot. So in other words, like you're
Fair.
still eating a healthy
Always.
amount of food. Yeah, like everything we say is like your nutrition is dialed in, is simply because glycogen is locally recruited. Right. So like if you're using glycogen to fuel something, the area that is fueling will become flatter sooner because
Okay.
your body is simply utilizing it. Like I've done like specialty programs in the past, like especially for my legs, not surprisingly. And what I've always noticed is as I do the specialty program, like hitting legs hard twice a week or something, my legs look flatter and like shit the entire time. And then when I stop doing it and my body is no longer constantly chasing that glycogen refill, my legs look amazing. Right.
Hmm.
So like there is an element of that, but I also think walking is so much lower intensity. Like I'm not talking about jogging in a medium intensity. Like
Okay.
walking is so low intensity
That's
that
fair.
I just think it's not the same as doing sets of 20 or 25 on squats. And again, another thing you need to think about is whenever you look at like a religious belief or a culture, and we are talking about a culture or a subculture here, right? You have to ask like, who were the people that invented this? And in the case of a lot of these like 70s like bodybuilders, these guys didn't have jobs. And this is like a serious point.
This
Like
is what?
a lot
How'd
of
you
them
live?
didn't. Well, I mean, sometimes you don't want to know how they lived. They
Yeah,
sometimes
fair
they
enough.
did
In a
some
van
exceptionally,
down by the river.
yeah, or they were doing some really weird, dirty stuff that still goes on in the fitness
Ah,
industry. But
got it.
and also in a van down by the river.
Yeah,
But
given
like,
rusty fish hooks behind the Walmart. Yeah.
but it's, but like, you know, they had time to train 3.5 hours a day. That was
Yeah.
what they did. Like I saw this clip of Dorian Yates. We talk about him every week. They asked, when did you train? He said, I trained every day. He was a professional, obviously, at 11 a.m. because my gym opened at noon. And he said back then gyms opened at noon. They were open from 12 to 8. But the gyms were
Hmm.
not open at 6 a.m. Okay. So either you trained at night or you had no job. Those were the people
11
that trained.
p.m. You mean? You said 11 a.m. So he would get there at
At
11
11 a.m.,
early.
11 a.m., he would train early and then the gym would open.
Oh, so it was at his gym?
Yeah, it was his gym. So he
Oh,
had the
okay.
gym to
Got
himself.
it.
Yes,
Got it. Oh
he
my
had the gym
God,
to
dude.
himself. And of course
That's
he
just
does. Yeah,
paradise.
yeah.
Yeah.
He just and we're talking about like a gym, like not like
Decked
a
out.
squat rack in a garage. We're talking about the
Yes.
best shit he could have gotten for that time, right?
Sure.
But like a lot of the training methodologies came out of just guys who didn't have anything else to fucking do.
Yeah.
Like that's so of course, if all your friends are bodybuilders and all you do is like maybe you bounce at night, you do some professional wrestling and some modeling gigs, you're not in an office from 9 to 5, you have nothing else to fucking do. Of course you're
Yeah.
gonna do the Arnold Schwarzenegger 45 set double splits. Like you've got nothing else going on. Like your whole life is
Yeah.
just lift weights and hang out
Yeah.
with my boys. And I remember
Dream
even
life.
hearing like Serge Nubret, had a phenomenal physique for his day.
Yes.
They would claim that he would train for hours doing insane amounts of high rep work. The thing he omitted was that he took amphetamines all the fucking time. Okay.
So
So
he had the energy.
he's just
Yeah.
crushing speed and just doing like 25 set arm workouts, 25 set shoulders all in one day. Like,
He was
yeah,
peeled.
you give early to mid 20s Eric Prush no job. I could do meth and train for 4 hours a day. Of course of course I could.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like
Yeah.
it would be, and I would love every second of it.
I know. I know
Yeah.
you would.
Of course I would. I would do meth.
Yeah.
And I would do meth and like do leg extensions 24 hours a day. Okay. I don't know
Yeah.
how I ever would work, but I know I would have done it. So
Yeah.
a lot of those methodologies came from guys that had no fucking jobs. Okay.
That's true.
And the prize money wasn't big enough to incentivize, and the glory that comes from it and the opportunities wasn't big enough to incentivize someone going, hey, wait a minute, let's try something different.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
money gets pumped into something and you want to win, you're going to start taking some chances. You're going to start experimenting. You're going to take a little bit more
Definitely.
drugs. You're going to start looking empirically at your training, and you're going to start learning about the human body and all this stuff. Those guys, it was like there were years when there was one year Arnold Schwarzenegger won the Olympia unopposed. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we love Arnold, we respect him, but that's not the same thing as Lee Haney winning 8 times in a row against Lee
Well,
Labrada
yes.
and that's not the same thing as Dorian beating Nasser and Kevin Levrone and Flex Wheeler. Like
Agreed.
Arnold, to his
Agreed.
credit, he didn't pick the era he competed in. You can't pick the
It's
time
true.
you were born. It's not your fault. Ironically, one of the years, maybe the only year that he competed unopposed, he actually brought his best physique. So he came correct. It wasn't like he's like, fuck this, I'm showing up fat. Like you guys are, like he had
Yeah.
pride.
Yeah.
He showed up and he put the work in. But like as bodybuilding became more lucrative, training methodologies began to change because there was incentive to look and dig deeper into why this stuff works. You know,
Yeah.
and I'll say this, and I want to hear your counterpoint, or maybe just if you agree or not. Like one of the reasons why Mike Menser, and Mike was a nut job. I respect Mike. I do think he had one of the greatest physiques of all time. I think he was the only bodybuilder, only professional bodybuilder at least, to ever win a bodybuilding show with a perfect score.
Is
And
that right?
it was either
Interesting.
the 79 Olympia, which Frank Zane won, but that was back when they had a lightweight and a heavyweight class. So Frank
Okay.
Zane won the lightweight class and then maybe beat Menser in the overall. But I think like when in the pose down or something at the end, Menser might have won that his weight class with the perfect score. Or it might have been a Mr. Universe. Doesn't matter. Okay. Part of the reason why he invented the system that he did was that he was going to chiropractic school and he couldn't train 6
Really
hours a day. And
interesting.
back then the logic
Okay.
was just do more volume. And he was like, I have a job. I can't. I think he also was in the Air Force for a period of time. So, like,
Okay.
he just couldn't train 4 hours a day. So he
Yeah.
had to try something else. But if he didn't have something else going on in his life, if he was just hanging out in 1973 with Arnold and the boys, he probably never would have came up with a different system.
It's true. It's true.
You know what I mean? So, like, there needs to be incentive for innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the, you know, competition getting more stiff is due to a bunch of features, like again, popularity, becoming more lucrative, like you said, and evolution. I think that even in strength athletes, even in mixed martial arts, it's like Fedor. Like I love Fedor, but people always say like, oh, he wouldn't have been undefeated for so long if he competed today. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. We'll never really know, but Kazmaier, people in like the 231 weight class hit the log press that Kazmaier hit in his day. So it's like,
Mhm.
is everyone just better now? Are the training methodologies more refined? Have we learned a lot about training and able to manipulate our bodies differently over the course of time as empirically we learn more and more about training? Or are we just getting more freakish as like a Colton, for example? Like, is he just the new, start of a new era of powerlifting where genetics are changing over time? It's hard to say. Uh, there are these once in a generation freaks like an Ed Cohn or a Colton that just smash every record. It doesn't logically make sense what they're doing. But like, for example, mixed martial arts, there was all one trick ponies that were put in a cage together as like a novelty in a way. Now you have to be an expert at every discipline. You can't have any holes in your game or you're going to get smashed. So you have to be so good at everything. Whereas the whole charm of mixed martial arts in the beginning was the karate expert versus the boxing guy, the wrestler versus the jiu-jitsu guy. It was like you took whatever, they wanted to see what discipline was best. Now every discipline has to be in this melting pot of skills. So, with bodybuilding, yeah, once you start seeing people make millions off sponsorships, every freak out of the woodwork
Of
is going
course.
to come into this. And it's kind of like looking at lacrosse versus football. Lacrosse can get you into scholarships, but that's really all it takes you to maybe do a good college.
Mhm.
Football has a much deeper talent pool because the opportunities go farther. Basketball has a much deeper talent pool. So you'll see all the freak athletes go towards those things. If bodybuilding, well, actually, probably bodybuilding is one of the most lucrative things you can do physically. But if powerlifting and bodybuilding were, making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, you'd see every freak athlete going out for that. You wouldn't,
Sure.
basketball wouldn't be a thing anymore. Baseball,
Mm,
because there's so much money to be made in these other sports, I think money drives a lot of interest in sport.
for sure.
And,
For sure.
it's going to be determinant on what your opportunity is, especially these days. Everyone's so money hungry these days that people will give up decades off their life to make more money in the short term. Look at these
Well,
bodybuilders who are
they say
dropping
that
dead left
they
and
say
right.
that when they make the decision, but I think if you spoke to them on their deathbed, you might get a different answer, right? I
Well,
mean,
hindsight's 2020.
like Friedrich Nietzsche was he's a fascinating guy, probably as a philosopher. Part of the reason why he was so popular, it wasn't necessarily his ideas, although that was part of it, was he was the best writer. He wrote
Okay.
incredible prose, okay? And he wrote it
Okay.
in very short, digestible ways that you could sit down and read a chapter in 5 minutes or less, 3 minutes, right? Uh, anyway, Nietzsche later in his life became a vitriolic anti-Christian. And the rumor was that on his deathbed, he had a deathbed conversion. People.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't know. That's for sure. There was a lot of political pressure to make it seem like he did or didn't. It's one of those things that's very murky. Okay, but a lot of people, it's very easy to talk tough, like you said before, when there's not a fucking gun in your face. Okay, once that gun is in your face, that separates the men from the boys. And let's be honest, most of us are boys. Okay, it is what it is in that context. Now, you touched on something that I thought was very interesting, the concept of evolution. I would say no. I would say that I think evolution, assuming that it's even taking place, it takes place too slowly. It would something that takes place over millennia for us to see the improvements that we've seen over the years. Also, I think it would require like natural selection if you are a Darwinian, which I'm not sure that I am, okay? But it takes place under Darwinian selection, meaning that there's pressure forcing you to evolve, right? And I think the only way that that would occur in humanity on a mass level would be if there was societal pressure for you to mate and to marry and reproduce with the biggest, strongest, fastest, best looking person you could find. And the reality is, if you did that, you'd be viewed as literally Hitler, because the Germans did have a kind of a eugenics view of breeding, and everything attached to the 1930s Germans is considered bad. Although, interestingly, the potential for athletic prowess, and I'm not saying commit war crimes here. I'm just talking about the breeding aspect of it. Everybody talks about the 1932 Olympics, where Jesse Owens wins the 100-meter dash as the ultimate refutation of the German viewpoint at that time. But actually, the Germans won the most medals in those Olympics. Okay, I'm pretty sure by a long shot. So yes, Jesse Owens won, and Jesse Owens hilariously later said that Hitler was nicer to him than Roosevelt, which is so
That's
funny.
crazy.
Okay,
Yeah. I heard he
which
called
is
him and congratulated
which
him,
was like
and yeah,
so
it's
funny. You know what I mean?
yeah.
For all the propaganda we want to have, it's like this guy was nicer. But the point is, yeah, I'm sure if you got society together and said, hey, listen, like, if you want to have kids, you have to be with a guy who's 6'1", that benches this amount or has a muscle fiber biopsy of such and such. For sure, you would see things be driven forward at an insane rate. I do think, and you touched on this as well, what's happening is there's just more tentacles everywhere. There's just more tentacles that can grab someone and pull them into the sport
Hmm.
because of social media,
Sure.
because the money and everything is higher. Like, I think if you took Babe Ruth and you gave him the strength and conditioning of today and had him come up in today's era, I think he'd still be one of the greatest players of all time. Okay, I don't think
Okay.
there's any question about it. Same thing with Mickey Mantle or a lot of those guys. I don't think that we've evolved that much as a species. However, it would be a lot tougher for him because now there's just more incentive for top level athletes to get into baseball. Back then, the pay wasn't that much better than another job you could have gotten.
They all
Okay.
had regular jobs
Yeah,
most of the
exactly.
time. They had
Unless you
a
were a
normal
star.
job and
Yeah.
then were a baseball player. Yeah.
Unless you were an enormous star. Okay.
Sure.
And even then, did you make enough money to never work again at the end of your career? Maybe not.
Probably not.
You don't
Yeah.
know that. Nowadays, there's so many more tentacles in athletics. There's more teams than there ever was. You look back at Major League Baseball, there was not that many teams. There wasn't that many open billets. Okay.
Sure.
What if you get a
Sure.
guy that's a late bloomer? Maybe he's not that good in high school. Okay. But you put him in, he's drafted. He spends a couple years in the minor leagues. Maybe he gets a late growth spurt. He finds the right coach. Okay. And now he could be one of the greatest of all time. Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many more, there's so many more tentacles that grab people and pull them into stuff. And on the topic of strength athletics, like, yeah, I think maybe it's entirely possible that Colton Engelbrat a couple years ago, he probably just would have been a farmer in South Africa, a really strong farmer. just picking
Yeah.
up bales of hay, not even thinking that he had a gift. There might have been some local folk tales about Colton. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
seriously, that's probably what would have happened. But now it's like, hey, let me try this. And you try it, and you're really good at it, and you keep doing it, and before you know it, you are literally the strongest person that we have known to exist potentially. Like
Yes.
that's how strong this guy is.
He's
Uh,
24 years old.
yeah,
If he
like
stays healthy for 5 more years even,
it's crazy.
dude.
And at that point, and I don't want to get sidetracked here, but if I'm him, I just
Sure.
retire. I just retire. It's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you just bury every record to the point of where it'll never be broken. It's like, see you later.
But you
You know?
remember at 24 years old, you're not going to stop. That's like the thick
No,
of
I'm
it. Your
saying when he gets to
ego and
30.
your
I'm saying when he
Oh,
gets to
okay.
30.
All
You
right.
know,
Fair
you know what I
enough.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, I totally agree.
If he's
So the
smart
point
enough,
is,
he will retire.
I agree. There's more tentacles that can pull people into a chosen endeavor. There's more incentive to find those people than ever before, and there's more incentive to be an athlete than ever before. Also, one of the things that's very interesting to me, and this kind of proves my point about the eugenics aspect of it, is one of the ways that you are recruited to play college football and play in the NFL is simply that your family members played in the NFL. The NFL will give you a huge opportunity if your
Yep.
dad was an offensive lineman and you're an offensive lineman. It's not at
In
all
most
uncommon.
sports.
If you go on, profootballreference.com now, you will see like a guy that played today, and literally like his dad and uncles played in the NFL, his brother played in the NFL, because why wouldn't you? Genetics is an undeniable thing. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And you're right, most sports, there's no doubt about it. And I guess especially to a certain extent in football, because the physical archetypes required to succeed are very specific to those positions. Like
Yes.
you could get a
Very
guy in
unique.
baseball who's 6'1" and he could really hit. You'll find the place to put him in the field.
Sure.
Okay. But for someone to play left tackle, you need a guy that's 6'4" minimum and 295 pounds. There's not that many of those people walking around
It's true.
as
It's
opposed
true.
to an athletic 6'1" guy. In fact, I used to be a huge basketball fan as a kid. I'm not anymore. I think the NBA is terrible. But I remember this interesting quote. I might have told this to you. Kenny Smith, he played for the Houston Rockets, and he's been like a basketball analyst now for probably like almost 3 decades. He played with Akeem Olajuwon on the Houston Rockets, and he's like
Okay.
my height, like 6'1", 6'2". And he was a very good point guard, but he had some injuries, kept him from accomplishing his true potential. And he said that one day they were getting ready to play a game, and Akeem Olajuwon, who's one of the greatest centers of all time, starts laughing at him. And he's like, "What are you laughing at?" He's like, "I wouldn't want to be you." And Kenny Smith's like, "Why?" He's like, "You know how many good athletes there are under 6'5" in this league?" He's like, "There's like 4 good centers in the NBA. I play hard like 10 nights a year."
Wow.
It's true. Like a freak athlete that moves at 6'11", who's he?
Yeah.
He's playing hard against Shaq, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, Rick Smits. Otherwise, he's going against a guy who's just there because he's tall. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
every night I score 28, I grab 12 rebounds, and it's easy. I'm playing against a jobber. Now, to Olajuwon's credit, he played against all of those guys that I just mentioned in the playoffs in 7-game series and dominated all of them. So you can't
Yeah.
take it away from him. But
No.
there are a lot more guys that are good athletes at 6 foot to 6'3" than 6'5", 6'7". And once you're talking 7 feet, it's like there's like 10 of them in the world,
Yeah.
maybe, that are that big and can move in any type of way. Where are they?
Just by
It's
proportionality on achieves 6'5" plus in height. It's just less people. There's going
exactly.
to be a lower talent pool,
And
as
that's before
always.
you factor in who can stay healthy. How many of those guys
That's
have
right.
like some sort of big bone issue, joint? They all like look weird. Like it's like a
Yes.
defect. Like they look weird. Like it's
And
a
the levers are
crazy
too
thing.
long, so stress transfers over a longer lever very
Mhm.
differently than a shorter
Yep.
lever, right? So, ankles take more stress and abuse, go moving laterally, knees, hips, all the, like, think Yao Ming, I think calf his tibia just broke just by way of moving around because he was such a
So
all the
crazy.
stress was spread out over such a long lever that he just couldn't handle like his upper body weight and all the weight coming down on his lower extremities. Really scary stuff if you're
It's
that
not a
big.
fun way to live, my friend.
No.
That's for damn sure. But I
Yeah.
think you're right, dude. I mean, listen, obviously people will follow the money. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of powerlifting records being broken. I mean, like Ed Cohn
Sponsors.
was a fireman.
Yeah.
Granted, Ed Cohn would be great now, Prime
He
Ed
would be.
Cohn now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's no
He'd still
question.
be
And
outrageously good.
yeah, there are plenty of guys from every era that would still be great now. No question. Nolan
Sure.
Ryan would be a great pitcher now. Okay,
Yes.
throwing 100 miles an hour always works. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
pretty much.
Deadlifting 900 pounds with a stiff bar is always impressive, especially if you're doing it at under 200 pounds or under 220,
It's
right?
beyond impressive.
But
Yeah.
so, but there's just more tentacles. There's greater reach. Every sport has greater reach. And, like you said, people at this point will do anything for money. It's less common now, unfortunately, for people to have families. So because of that, they are less risk averse. They're more willing to be like, yeah, fuck it, I'll live till 35 and have a massive heart attack, because they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't,
Yeah.
they don't see themselves as part of anything greater than the endeavor that they are partaking in, which you could argue is the mentality you have to have, maybe, but most people are never that good enough at any one thing to warrant having that mentality.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Eddie Hall, who was the first one to break 500 kilo deadlift, he was world's strongest man, very decorated strongman athlete, and now a big personality on the internet. He's a very funny guy. He just, got great content overall because of his personality, of who he is. But I heard him say recently that he kind of locked himself away mentally for his pursuit of greatness in strongman. He said everything shut down. He neglected his family, neglected all his relationships because he wanted to be world's strongest man. And he's now saying, in hindsight, he could have done it even if he was more relaxed about it and paced himself a little bit differently. He said he could have probably achieved the same things, even if he didn't have the same, crushing mentality that really ruined some of his relationships. So, whether that's true or not, I think obsession does drive greatness. So I think you have to be kind of obsessed with something.
Of course.
Jerry Rice and his warm-ups were insane. And, these basketball players shooting at a high level shoot 500 to 1,000 shots a day. Like, that's obsession. That's not just work. That's obsession. So I do think being obsessed gives you an edge over people who are not. But, being physically gifted naturally also plays a role. You have to be physically gifted, plus have the interest. It's like if Michael Jordan never got into basketball, would he have ever been that great at anything else? With Michael Phelps, never got into swimming. These people are built a certain way, and the way they're built accommodates the tasks and demands of certain sports.
Absolutely.
So if you put them in the wrong sport, Michael Phelps is a ping pong player. Maybe he would have been great, but he would have never achieved the notoriety.
Yeah, just gonna put it out
Yeah.
there. I mean, listen, we saw it when Michael Jordan tried to play baseball. Okay,
Yep.
granted, he's
Yep.
technically was playing professional baseball, which meant
Sure.
that
But
he
he's
was
probably got an honorable mention.
I don't know that he gets that opportunity. Okay,
Exactly.
any other way.
Exactly.
And as a
Yeah.
side note, he was paid his Chicago Bulls contract to play minor league baseball because the Bulls were owned by the same guy who owned the Chicago White Sox.
That's crazy.
Okay,
It's just a draw. It's a fan draw.
It was a fan draw, and it was also, we want to maintain a good relationship with this guy because we know he's going to come back and play basketball again.
Yeah, once he knows he sucks at baseball, he'll come back.
You know what I mean? So from his perspective, it's like, okay, we're just going to keep him happy, keep him healthy, give him some incentive to maintain this relationship, and then he'll come back. There are the guy who excels in two sports is freakishly rare, and usually those two sports are very closely interrelated in terms of the physical attributes. Like you have seen a decent amount of guys who played high level football and baseball, but if you think about it, both of those things warrant speed and explosiveness with long rests between plays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bo Jackson?
Yeah, Bo Jackson, Brian Jordan. He played for a couple different, Deion Sanders. Like there are guys that played on a high level with both. It's very rare, but baseball players are surprisingly explosive. You run a short distance, okay? You swing something very fast to hit something very far. Like if you want to look at some of the most impressive athletic displays you'll ever see, go online and just look up great center fielders fielding the ball.
Okay.
If you go to a baseball game, I used to love baseball, and you see the size of a center field, and you realize it is enormous.
Massive.
The distance that an elite center fielder can cover and knowing it just off the crack of the bat where it's going to be able to move their body without taking their eye off the ball and have the awareness to know there's a person
Yeah,
here, there's a wall here. Like this is crazy athleticism, right?
it is.
You could see how a guy that, and by the way, Deion Sanders, he played cornerback. Okay, Bo Sanders was Bo Jackson was a running back, and I don't remember what Brian Jordan played. I think he did play for the Atlanta Falcons as well. I think they were all like secondary or running back, so guys that are fast.
Okay.
There wasn't linebackers that were playing or linemen that were playing baseball.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
just wouldn't that's too far on the other end of the spectrum there. But these are all great points, man, and I think it's tough to say that we've evolved. If anything, I think the evidence is that we've devolved because we no longer have uh standards for things like health and beauty and fitness. Like society has been at war with good looking, fit people for a significant portion of our lives, and it has rewarded people who are unhealthy, ugly, and overweight with disproportionate amounts of status, with like the fat acceptance movement and all this other stuff. And
Yeah.
so because of that, there's actually less emphasis than ever on, even though it still is there, but it's there in a toxic way. There's been less emphasis than ever on a mass society, totally everyone accepts it way, on being healthy, fit, and good looking. Like,
Yeah.
and I think if you contrast that with, and this is very interesting to me, like the ancient Greeks, I mean, their cultural ideals, because of course there was no television or social media, was the art they created. The Grecian man, this chiseled athletic body, like that was considered what you aspired to look like as a man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not too big, right? But chiseled. Like you look at a physique of that's most people would die to have a physique like that, even today.
Sure.
Okay. Like
Sure.
athletic, chiseled physique. We don't have an agreement like that in society. Half society thinks that you should look like a steroid maniac, and the other half thinks that you should look like a morbidly obese cow. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's like this
Yeah.
is crazy. Like these are completely unconscionable. You can't even blend one with the other. It's totally crazy. And so because of that, I do think you've seen a degree of you could say devolution. Other authors have called it. I think it's involution. Whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But there are still talented people everywhere, and every time infrastructure increases, like I'm sure there's a guy who works for the NBA whose job is to go to Africa and find 7 foot tall black people. I'm sure of it. Like I'm sure like they hear a story and the guy's going to the village. He's getting in a
Yeah.
gas powered Jeep and he's trying to find them. Okay. Because why wouldn't you? There's so much money to be made if this guy turns out to be good. You know, like
Sure.
it's just, it's all reward and no risk. Most guys don't pan out anyway. Right. So
It's a numbers game like anything else. It's a numbers game.
exactly,
Like how many leads can you
exactly, dude.
track down? Yeah. That's
100%. It's
fair.
just like
That's fair.
sales or anything else. They generally don't even expect you to succeed. It's like you said, 1 in 50 might be good. Whatever. I'm just making
Yeah.
that up, but
Sure. Sure.
it's
Sure. Yeah.
it's
Whatever the per capita is. Yeah.
something to that effect. But
Yeah.
yeah, dude, these are all honestly totally brilliant points. And I think one of the things that I really struggle with here is that what's the ideal man? Because we all feel the call, all of us that like to lift, to get bigger, to get stronger. But then at a certain point, you just look like a freakazoid. Okay, like
True.
it's and no, now listen, most of us will never get there. All of us will never.
Mostly
We aren't
without
just going to look
drugs.
like
Yeah.
Nick Walker, right? You don't just wake up one day and look like Nick Walker. That's a
No,
lifelong
that's the
pursuit.
fallacy. That's
Yes,
the
a lifelong
misconception.
pursuit to look like Nick Walker.
I, I love when clients tell me, like especially like older female clients, they're like, I don't want to get too bulky. I don't want to look like these muscle guys. I'm like, you won't. Don't worry. You have no shot at that.
Dude,
We're going to
it's
put
like
marginal amounts of muscle on your body for your general health.
if you
Yeah. So, but
understood
going
what
to
these
this
guys
new
are putting
gym
in
that I'm
their
going
body.
to, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically chemical experiments. But going to this new gym, I'm seeing a lot of freakazoids now that you don't see it at regular gyms. This is like a bodybuilding gym, so I'm seeing very, very heavily muscled bodybuilders. I don't know if they're amateurs or just become pros, like low key pros. But I saw this one guy. He had like first of all a trainer, which I don't know. I judge trainers a lot, so I don't want to get into bashing anybody. But he had a trainer, and but the bodybuilder was hilarious. He was like 5'6", 5 feet wide, and he was basically just, dude, like the typical Neanderthal. He's dragging his gym bag behind him to the next machine, like dragging like all of his equipment behind him from machine to machine. Not he could have lifted it easily. He's just on purpose, I think, just dragging it to like make a spectacle of himself. But the physiques are pretty crazy, and when you see them in person, you're like,
Yeah.
I can see how impressive that is, and especially fitness, lifelong fitness person. It's so impressive, but it's kind of gross in person. It really is. It's very shocking when you see somebody who's that heavily muscled in person. Even though when you look at a magazine or on stage, you've always kind of like admired the drive and the accomplishment. But I also find it funny that you see people like Sam Sulek, who looks enormous in his videos, and then when he goes on stage and he's sucked all the
Normal.
water out and he's cut, he looks like kind of like a not average, but like a regular kind of built person. It's
Dude,
weird, like how
two
the
things,
camera
dude.
angles or whatever, it changes your perspective.
There's two things I want to touch on that. Great points. First thing is, my first gym I ever trained at was owned by up and coming bodybuilder. I don't think he ever got his pro card, and he was pretty
Okay,
short, like a short Italian New York guy. You know what
all
I
right,
mean? Obviously was jacked. And at that point in time, was probably the most jacked person I've ever seen in person.
okay,
But I don't remember looking at him being like, "Oh my god, that is insane." But he also dressed in the very '90s bodybuilder way, loose shirts.
baggy
You
as
know,
hell, yeah,
yeah. Years later,
hoodies, big sweatpants, yeah,
exactly. Years later, dude, I went to the Montanari Brothers powerhouse gym, okay,
okay,
for a it's like a very famous hardcore gym in, I think, Connecticut. And I went there. This
okay,
is the day that I met Donnie Thompson. We went there. Donnie was
nice,
doing a seminar. It was in New Haven, Connecticut, right? I
okay,
drive there with my boss at the time, John Gaglione, and walk in, and we see Evan Santopani, who was a legit pro body, like competed on the Olympia stage in
yeah,
the 212 weight class. Okay.
okay,
So he wasn't
smaller
that
guy,
tall. Okay.
yeah,
Dude, that was the first like legit bodybuilder, that like pro level bodybuilder that I'd ever seen. And I had worked with guys also that were aspiring bodybuilders that were like my height, and they might have been 260 or 270, but they didn't have that 3D, like you said, 5 foot
thickness,
4, 5 feet wide type thing going
yeah,
on. Dude,
yeah,
when I saw Evan Santopani, I was like, dude, what is that? And I agree with you. It's not just, wow, that guy has a great physique. There's a part of you that's like a little grossed out by it. Is it's so
it's so
weird.
abnormal,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's your brain knows that that is not normal. Like the proportions, like when you see a legit bodybuilder, the size of the shoulders is really what's the most striking in my
telling,
opinion. Like
yes,
it's
agreed,
just makes no sense. Like the proportions of one muscle to another, because obviously the proportions in a bodybuilding show, they're arbitrary. No, it's not human nature to be like your calves should be the same size as your upper arm. Someone made that
sure,
up. Right.
yes,
You know what I mean? So sometimes those proportions look unnatural on people who never would have been built that way unless they did steroids and dedicated their whole lives to get their shoulders, to get their physique out a little bit wider. Like it's a very
yeah,
crazy, unnatural thing. I remember seeing Evan Santopani, and my boss was like, that's a legit bodybuilder. And he was a gentleman. He was super cool. He was talking to us, nicest guy, but it was definitely jarring. And but there is a difference, and I'm glad you brought this up. Between seeing one in the wild, because scale is very important here. When I was a kid, I went to a hotel in the Bahamas for vacation. The same time, there was an NBA Players Association convention going on, or whatever, a big NBA convention. I was out at the dock outside Atlantis Hotel in the Bahamas, and I walked right past Scottie Pippen. Okay.
okay,
Was a big, 90s NBA fan, and he looked like the biggest freakazoid I've ever seen. I swear it looked like his arms were dragging on the floor. Okay. He was, he's
yeah,
6'5", 6'6", to your point about Sam Sulek. You see Sam Sulek, and he looks bigger than he perhaps is because he's around normal people, or he's,
yes,
just in front of machines or something. You don't realize how big 6'6" is until you see 6'6" away from 6'8", 6'4", and 7 feet. An
yeah,
NBA player is always being evaluated against other NBA
it's true,
players. So
it's
when
true,
Scottie Pippen walked past me, I was like, what the fuck? Like, it just made sense. Like, he was always considered the
Yeah.
greatest defensive player of all time, and sure, a big part of his skill. And to be fair, I looked this up. He's like, let's say he was 6'6", 6'7". I think his wingspan is 7'2".
What?
Dude.
It's crazy.
So imagine trying to get past him. He just goes like this. What are you gonna do,
It's a
dude? Like,
wall. It's a
yeah,
wall.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
So when you see those people, like, out, they look much, much bigger. There really is a difference, and I applaud this now, between how the open bodybuilding guys look and the classic physique guys. The
Okay.
classic physique guys almost look like normal people. Almost. They're
Yeah.
closer to normal. Like Wesley Vissers, who's now like one of the big classic physique guys. I think he just won the Arnold. Like, when you see him next to an open bodybuilding competitor, you're like, okay, you are clearly training for a different look.
Yes.
You're clearly going for a different look. And Chris Bumstead, when he puts on a shirt, almost looks normal. Like, he just looks
Yeah.
like a jacked guy. You're like,
Yeah, yeah.
he could put a suit on, and you're like, that's a normal guy. As we've said in the past, the abuse of making the '90s Olympia contenders wear suits to press conferences. You see, Marcus Rule
Yeah.
in a suit, and you're like, this is
A
this
box.
is awful.
It's a cloth box.
This is awful. Like,
Yeah.
your tailor hates you. Like, that's like, or he loves you because he charged you $100,000 for that suit. I don't
Pretty
know
much.
which one it is. But you're right. When you see them in the right context, like, I worked at a store in Hempstead for some time, and I used to help DeBrickashaw Ferguson when he was playing for the Jets. Okay. And he was 6'7", or the picture that we all took with Mike Jenkins. I have a
Oh
picture
my
with
God,
Mike
dinosaur,
Jenkins.
dude. Dinosaur.
I always tell people, because I'll show the picture of me with Mike Jenkins, and they're like, I don't get it. He doesn't look that big. And I'm like, I am 6'2", 245 pounds in that picture.
Yeah.
Like, you think I'm 5'7".
Even Dom was like 6'3", and he was probably, 290, 300
Yeah.
something pounds. And he made Dom look, small
Average.
in
Average.
comparison.
Made him look like a normal person.
Average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those people
Dinosaur.
exist. They exist. And like you said, like we said before, there's more money invested than ever in trying to find them.
Yes.
Yes.
Scouting.
That's it, man. Like, what else could you say? And that shows you, as we've said before, like, nature is real. Like, I remember the shock on your face. I think it was you. You might not remember this. Mike Jenkins did a seminar at Gaglione, okay? And he was going over some, like, specifics of, like, the yoke. And I remember seeing him put the yoke. I don't remember how much weight was on there, but it was enough that would have been maybe at like a local show, would have been, on.
Sure.
He just picked it up and sprinted with it like it was an empty bar. And I remember you and my old business partner Brandon being like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I would have had
real.
to brace and like lock in, and he's just like,
Yeah.
all right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna put it, and he's like walking,
As
he's like sprinting and
coaching us
talking.
while he's
Yeah. And you're like, dude, that's 700 pounds. What do you mean?
dude.
You're just a little winded? That's all it is? You're just a little winded
Yeah.
from this? It's unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable.
I went to one of my first contests was York, Pennsylvania, and it was a big strongman contest. At the time, it was the biggest amateur contest in history. It was 205 competitors, which was a
Okay.
massive contest.
That's crazy.
It took like 14 hours because they didn't, I guess, appreciate how much time it takes for each person to go individually. Even if they had multiple lanes and events running, it was a groundbreaking event. But when you go to an amateur strongman contest, you still see some very large, thick people, very husky, because there's heavyweights there. There's very large, what's called lightweights or light heavyweights, which is like 231, which most of those guys are like 250, 260 anyway. The heavyweights could be 275 to 350. A lot of them are 6'3" to 6'6". They're big people. But Mike Jenkins came to spectate, just to like walk around. And he was like walking around the fairgrounds, and you can just see people, everybody, there's so many big people there. You thought he would just blend in. He was just like, everybody was, even the strongman competitors were just like marveling at this creature that was like, again, and he had that like, that mohawk that was individual spikes. So he looked like an actual dinosaur, like like, so it was just, it's amazing to see these people in person because they really truly are marvels. And you know, he had such a bright future if he didn't pass. He was such a talented person. I think he was an offensive lineman. I think he
Yeah,
for I
for
can't remember where he
Virginia.
played in
For
college,
Virginia,
right? Yeah,
he was I think either a left guard or a left tackle. I want to say for Virginia, UVA. When I see
yeah,
people like that, I don't, you don't want to sound like a negative Nancy here, Ian. Okay,
never.
but when I saw Mike Jenkins in particular, I was reminded of this interview I saw with Paul McCartney. They asked him about going to see Jimi Hendrix play when Hendrix kind of burst onto the scene. And he's bursting onto the
Okay,
scene as like the Beatles are kind of breaking up, you know what I mean? Like the late 60s, early 70s, whatever.
yeah.
And he was like, when you went to go see Jimi Hendrix play guitar, what did you think? And he was like, that I should probably quit playing guitar.
Yeah,
Like
that's crazy.
like I'm Paul
That's
McCartney.
crazy.
Like even though he was a bass
Yeah,
player, but obviously he was competent on
yeah,
guitar to write songs. He's like, I should just quit. Like
yeah,
it's over.
yeah,
Like you expect me to do as good as that guy? He's like
yeah.
he just ripped acid, and he's like shredding 10 times more than I ever could. Like
On an
just
upside down guitar, by the way. Like
he's
on an upside down guitar.
so high. Okay, he's so high. With same thing with like Dimebag Darrell. Like he would be on stage like murdering it. He's 30 shots deep. Like what do you
Yeah,
like? This is
totally
just
blacked out.
just next level
He
unconscious
doesn't remember
talent.
any of this.
Yeah, just dude. All right, I'll leave you with this. So much of what we discuss here is, we love the limits of human performance. And of course, we like to discuss the peaks of human performance, right? Like,
Sure.
how fast are you? How strong are you? Whatever. Who's the best MMA fighter? But I'm also simultaneously impressed by the valleys of human performance. Like, how badly could you abuse yourself and still somehow function? Because
To
that's
survive.
almost as interesting. So I, like many white men, I like Van Halen. Okay, and I'm a bigger fan of Van Hagar than Van Halen.
Okay.
Personally, I
Okay.
can't stand David Lee Roth. So
Yeah.
I just love Sammy Hagar, but I understand both eras are great. And I read Sammy Hagar's book some time ago, like his biography, and then I
Okay.
read the biography of like Van Halen's first manager who left. I think his name was Neil Monk, and he like left Van Halen when Roth left, and then Hagar comes in, and they're talking about Alex Van Halen and how much of an alcoholic he was, and they said that when they would get to a venue, he would sleep somewhere, be it in a closet, in locker room, whatever, and everybody had to be quiet because he was completely incapable at that time of being awake and not drinking. So if you woke him up too early, he would start drinking too early and then he'd be unable to play the show because he'd be too
Wow.
drunk to play the show. Okay.
Damn.
So like just everyone's tiptoeing around him because, this is the difference between him playing the show and not playing the show. Then when he played, they would literally give him like the Happy Gilmore beer dispensing plastic helmet. Okay. And he's just like playing hot for teacher and just chugging, a couple tall boys, like just coming in, just play. And then he had a Rubbermaid garbage can behind the drum set that he would just vomit into the whole show. Can you imagine being the roadie? You left your family behind. You're at home trying to make your rock and roll dreams come true. And they're like, you're going to be Alex Van Halen's puke guy for the whole, that's what you do. You clean his puke out of this. Like, and somehow they made every show for the most part. They played on a high level. And this dude is basically mainlining alcohol like all
Functioning
day.
alcoholic.
Like,
That's like the epitome of the
yeah,
term.
unbelievable, dude. Or
Yeah.
like, and Eddie Van Halen had his own problems too. I think Alex quit earlier. I think he was cleaned up by
Okay.
the time Hagar was in the band, and then Eddie just spiraled really out of control, and then he wound up having some major issues, of course, before he eventually cleaned up. But the point is, you see, like, I remember reading a story about Alice in Chains talking about how they were touring in South America, and Lane Staley and a couple of the other grunge guys, they couldn't get new syringes to inject their heroin. So they were using all of them the same syringe and
Oh my God.
just cleaning it with bleach every single day. What do you mean,
Christ.
dude? Like
Yeah.
how like I understand Lane Staley died. He's one of the most talented rock and roll vocalists ever. But you see this and you're like, how did you get that far? Like
Yeah.
how did you even
The
get that far?
stupidity.
Yeah, like it's unbelievable like what the human body can take, like in terms of like physical punishment, like getting beaten up by fists and knees and feet,
Yeah.
but also like chemical punishment. Like the way that some of these people, like the way the body, like if you give me alcohol today, I'm going to be out of commission tomorrow. And yet there
Yeah.
are people that have conditioned their bodies to literally take in alcohol. Like if you got to think about it, if your body flushes out one alcoholic beverage an hour, like we've been taught, okay, Alex Van Halen, there's probably years where he always had alcohol in his system.
Yeah. Round the clock.
Yeah, because even if he
Yeah.
sleeps 8, 10, 12 hours, if he drank 20 beers, which you got to think is nothing. If you're doing a beer dispensing plastic helmet, 20 beers is shit. Okay, that's next level. Okay,
Yeah.
so like you literally there is alcohol in your system, 24/7. And I went to Brazil some time ago with my friend, with one of my dear friends. I was down there for 2 weeks. Okay, this is the only time in my life, Ian, that I ever fully went insane with partying. Okay. I
Okay.
was in Rio de Janeiro for 2 weeks. There was not 1 second that I was in that city the first time that I wasn't drunk. Not
Wow.
1 second. I was drunk the second I woke up from my post-flight nap until I got on the plane on the way home. And I will
Got it.
tell you that when I got home, I lost so much muscle. It was
Oh yeah.
unbelievable. In two
Yeah.
weeks, I looked like a different person. Like I couldn't
It's crazy.
believe what I did to myself. And that was just 2 weeks. Imagine 2 years.
Yeah. No. I should, yeah, I mean, people go for decades
Yeah, yeah,
with this kind of
yeah.
abuse.
It's
Seriously.
yeah,
You know,
it's
Ozzy,
unbelievable.
think about, like the Stones, the entire, it's all these, they're, it's kind of a marvelous thing to see human durability, just how much abuse you can take, and then eventually clean up, and you're like, I lived hard for a bunch of years, and I'm okay now. Like that's even more crazy. And some people live a straight laced life, don't do anything crazy, and they get cancer and then they die. So it's like,
Yeah,
durability is an interesting
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So
It's
how
so
people can,
genetically predetermined.
it
That's why
is,
I
it
always
is.
defend. I find myself, Ian. It's like a friend of mine once said this about economics. He was like, "Listen, when I'm in a room with a lot of socialists, I sound like a capitalist. When I'm in the room with a lot of capitalists, I sound like a socialist because he's somewhere in the middle between those two
It's
things,
so
right?"
relative, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to steroids, when I am in the room of a bunch of roid heads, I sound like an anti-steroid guy. When
Interesting.
I'm in the room with people who are anti-steroid, I sound like the biggest juice head you've ever met in your life.
All right. Yeah. Fair
And
enough.
and the reason why I say that is you post about Ultimate Warrior, which we both have. John Meadows, another one. To a person, people will be like, "Yeah, good luck that did it," and they both died at 50. Guess what? All of the men in their families also died at 50 from heart attacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, dude, like you could see why the Ultimate Warrior would be like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do trend and go nuts," because
Live the
no
way I
one
want to
no one
live.
makes it out alive. No one's making it past 50 anyway. Might as
Yeah.
well just send it. John Meadows could have had nothing but asparagus and chicken his whole life and run marathons. He probably still has a heart attack at 45.
Yeah. Yeah.
Genetics are there. That's it,
Resilience.
dude. It's the ultimate factor.
You get the hand you're dealt. You get the hand you're dealt.
Mhm.
How much time do you have? I want to do physique of the week if you
Oh,
have a
do
few
it. Let's go.
minutes.
I got some minutes. Let's do it.
So I feel like with this conversation is kind of perfect who I chose. I'll try the guessing game. It's going to be very, very easy for you to guess, but I will tell you that I chose this person because in spite of the sport that he chose to pursue, he was basically bodybuilder looking physique
Okay.
when it's not conducive to that sport.
Okay.
So any first guesses? One more clue and you're gonna get it.
Aside from the so he was too jacked for the sport, basically,
Not
or like
too jacked, but his physique did not resemble all the other competitors in the sport.
this is getting down to like how much I know about you and who you
Well,
would pick. So my first
yeah,
thing would be Brock Lesnar.
nope.
Okay.
All right, so I've never really stumped you before, but again, one more clue and you got it. 5-time world's strongest man, the only 5-time champion.
Oh, Marius.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I want to try something for the first time. I want to play a training montage, a video of his montage, and we can kind of like watch it for 30 seconds or so and then kind of go over it. But before I do that, I'm going to read off some of his training stats. So apparently would train for 3 to 6 hours a day. And that included jump rope. Well, the foundation of his program, not to be, not surprising, squats, front squats, deadlifts, military press, rows, and then
he looked
he
like
would,
it. That looked like that was the
yeah.
foundation of his program. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but also the physique, the fullness, the leanness, how lean he was for how strong he was, really outrageous. I do think before I show the video, he was only so dominant because of the era that he competed and the federation he competed. I don't know if you know this. There's a big rift in the strongman community between federations.
You blew
And
my mind
World's
when you told me
Strongest,
this. You
yeah,
changed my
World's
whole
Strongest,
perspective.
is that right?
Yeah.
So World's Strongest Man basically was the original and kind of branched off on its own, and they had some sort of falling out with a bunch of the top strongmen, more the heavier, stronger one rep max strongmen, and they went to a federation called IFSA. Right, so IFSA and World's Strongest Man competed, side by side for a long time. World's Strongest Man always had more television notoriety. They were always on ESPN2, and they got more clout that way because it was more accessible to view until now, where you can always see strongman, happening on the internet or whatever. But Marius chose to stay with World's Strongest Man, whereas a lot of the, let's say, heavier, fatter, and stronger one rep maximum people went, like Zadrunas, for example, and others went to IFSA, where they started breaking all these one rep max records.
Yep.
And World's Strongest Man, for a time, kind of veered towards more, I don't want to say cardio based, but definitely more endurance strength versus maximum strength or maximal strength. All right, so let's try to pull this up here. All right, so share this screen. Let me know if you can see this here. All right, can you see this? Can you see the screen?
It's coming right up. I got it.
Cool.
Right now it's blank. It just says Ian DiGiacomo's screen. Is this on YouTube?
Yeah.
Hold on. Is it playing on your end or no?
It's playing on my end. It's not playing on your end?
No, I just see a gray screen. But
Maybe
it could be
YouTube
a
blocking
connection
it?
thing. No, I doubt it. What's the name of the video?
Marius Pudzianowski -training. It's just like his training montage. So I see it playing in our studio here.
So then
you can't see it playing.
So then I can't see it, but here's what it is. I'll pull it up. I got it here, so I'll watch it on my end as well. Okay. So
right.
Let's smash play.
So we're at 37 seconds. If you want to just fast forward to the time so you can kind of like see.
Got it.
So it'll be synced. Got it. Go for it.
Yeah. So I'm watching it on my phone, by the way. So don't worry about it. If you have it on,
no worries.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I have so much that I want to say about this already. In a way, I wonder if strongman ever gets as popular as it's been without Marius.
I mean, because of the way he looked, he drew in so many casual fans.
Yeah.
So for example, when I showed my brother-in-law strongman a while back, it was all guys who looked like Zadrunas. And he goes, those guys just are like a bunch of beer drinkers. Like he didn't, you don't really see them, I guess, in scale and with normal people. So you don't know that they're 6'8" and 420 pounds. They just look like fat guys.
Precisely.
So when you see Marius,
it's all relative.
Yeah, exactly. When you see Marius Pudzianowski, even on TV with his shirt off, it's like, holy shit, that guy, that's the strongest man in the world. Yes, like that's what you envision when you're a normal person as the strongest man in the world. So, but you can see just how much volume he was doing.
Yes.
I mean,
this is crazy. A lot of machine work. It's interesting to see a strongman competitor do chest pressing and chest supported rows on like almost like a hammer strength machine. You don't look like this without training that way, though, to maintain that type of muscle mass.
But funny thing is, Eddie Hall trained a lot of bodybuilding, mostly bodybuilding stuff during his strongman peak. Like he trained the events and he trained deadlifting. But if you look at a lot of his training videos, most of it was machine work, bodybuilding, very similar, almost interchangeable to a bodybuilder as far as the movement selection.
Okay.
Then you have to train the events and you train the like the specialty skills that strongman requires besides the barbell lifts. But look at this fucking guy. I mean, it's a freak. It's just. I think there's also like a Polish maniac mentality that they train until they die. They just train so hard, so long. The durability. I want to just also note the durability. I'll stop sharing my screen now. But um, to be able to train that much and look like that and do all the jump rope and the cardio and the events and all this, whether he did hours of mobility, who knows? Whether he just was built that way that he could sustain this. I mean, just incredible. I wanted to
Do you
bring that up because
know?
he's one of the greatest of all time in his sport and physique wise. I think he's got one of the greatest physiques in his
Do you know
prime
what his
of all
athletic
time.
background was before he got into strongman? He was a martial artist, right? I mean, because he
oh,
has
that's right.
competed.
That's right. Yes.
So it's
Yes.
just, I look at that as an advertisement on how to build an athlete, which is, you know, you teach the coordination stuff young. You get him, you teach the athlete to be light on their feet, to be flexible, to be mobile young. You stack
Yeah.
the muscle on later. Okay. It's very hard to do it the other way around. If
Interesting.
you're
Yeah.
350 pounds, you really get to learn to move like a cat. Most of the guys who you're
That's
not
fair.
born 350. You
Yeah.
learn to use your body as a young person. If you keep practicing those skills, you don't unlearn them, right? So
Yeah.
it takes time to be that jacked. I think with Marius, that's a perfect example of someone that played a lot of athletics, probably did a lot of wrestling. I mean, you got to keep in mind, like in Europe, Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling, huge deal. Obviously in
Sure.
Europe, strength training, like Olympic lifting and stuff, is much more popular than it is in the United States. So that's definitely probably played a lot of
Yeah.
soccer growing up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Just
Probably not on a high level, but a lot of soccer and everything.
a variety of athletics.
Yeah, that contributes
Different
to
disciplines.
mobile hips,
Yeah.
being light on your feet, and everything else. That's always what struck me about Marius was how much lighter on his feet he was than his competitors. Obviously, the physique is what draws your eyes to the guy. The guy had an
Of
incredible
course.
physique, but
Yeah.
when you saw him compete against people, to my recollection, he was always much lighter on his feet than Phil Pfister
Fast.
or Jesse
So fast.
Morunde or a lot of
Yeah.
the other guys. And like you could say what you want about the show kind of being tailor made to him. I kind of understand that it to a certain extent it was, but here's the thing. That's no different than any sport. As we spoke about last week, every sport tends to want repeat champions to build legacies. Okay.
Yes.
So like,
Yes.
you know, it's the bodybuilding is notorious for that. Okay. You
Sure.
want to build brand names. And yeah, I'm sure the promoters of World's Strongest Man would have rather had Marius win 5 times than Phil Pfister, who was just a giant fat white dude. Okay. Who was
Well,
incredible, but like he
yes.
just looked
It's
like
marketing,
it's just
right?
phenomenal marketing. You know, it's
It's like when
phenomenal
Alistair
marketing.
Overeem came into the UFC when he was still jacked and coming off his steroids. Like he looked like the superhuman that you'd want. Like he's the best marketing, tool that you could use because he like looks the part. He looks mean. He can speak fairly well, so he can kind of promote himself that way too. But it's funny that you say that because Eddie Hall was a swimmer beforehand. So if you look up pictures of Eddie Hall
There you go.
before he started doing a lot of steroids and being a strongman, he looked great. Like his swimmer physique was kind of like bodybuilder-esque. He was very, very heavily muscled, even then, at like 17 or 20 years old. And that's like what would actually attract women or like would actually be normal and like sought after among most people. Like when you see Eddie Hall at his peak in strongman, he was like, I mean, there's a powerhouse, but he was just so fat and like just a heart attack waiting to happen.
Yes.
There was actually a pretty cool documentary on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's still on there about him, if you haven't seen it, and his pursuit of strongman. And he would be having like a cheesecake a day,
Yeah, I was
like a
just gonna say
whole
that.
cheesecake.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you can only sustain that for so long. I'm really happy he did his thing and got out because some people just they stay in too long and then, bad things start to happen.
Marius was perfect for the marketing. He also was interesting in that he could have played both the face and the heel. He was
Yeah,
so good
mostly
looking
the
that
heel.
maybe you wanted him to win, but he also had this edge to him. I think I've told you this. My favorite moment, and I remember this so well, like this is pre internet really, like you couldn't just go on YouTube and watch it. Like when the World's Strongest Man would air, I would always be really I would always watch it. And
Yeah, me too.
I'd always be but they wouldn't always air it correctly. Like sometimes it would be out of order. And so like I'm trying to remember the last episode I saw and who's advancing to the finals or whatever. But I remember one of the years that Jesse Morunde gave him like a good run,
Yeah,
gave him some tough competition. And I remember there was some event that either that Jesse made a mistake in. He either zeroed it or, fell way short of where he needed to be. And just as he like basically removes himself from the competition, they cut to Marius and he's like pumping his fist, like, yeah, you lost. And
This
it was just
dude,
such a little cool element that it just made him look like he had this edge. And
yeah,
that's what made Phil Pfister beating him such a big deal,
yes,
because he was like this average looking, relative to the other guys, of course,
sure,
like firefighter from South Carolina
yeah,
that beats this like Herculean, incredible physical specimen.
yeah,
And
unbeatable, yeah,
I try not to let the politics of strongman ruin Marius for me, because like a lot of people, I didn't know that the whole time Marius was doing this, that like Zydrunas was overhead pressing like 550 pounds. I had
well,
no idea
yes.
that there was a whole
However,
other thing going on.
However, before the split, the rift in strongman, Marius was still beating Zydrunas back when Zydrunas was young in
Oh
the
wow,
early
okay, I didn't know
20s.
that. I
So
did not know
they,
that.
they
All
they
right.
did compete together for many years,
Uh-huh.
and Marius took like 2 championships over Zydrunas, and then eventually when Zydrunas when they mended fences and they brought those guys back into the fold,
Uh-huh.
Zydrunas was at his peak, Marius was kind of on his downslope, and they had like 1 or 2 contests where Brian Shaw made his debut, and they had like a lot of there's one forget what year it was, maybe 2016, 2014, around there, where basically the most stacked roster of World's Strongest Man, they finally brought all these freaks back, and it just showed you how, much Marius was kind of starting to decline a little bit as far as the 1 rep max stuff goes, and how freakish the up and coming generation was. Like Brian Shaw was just outrageous in his debut, pushed Zydrunas to the end. I would say one story about Marius to just kind of solidify his heel characteristics. And like you said, he has that switch, that mode that he just goes into like a kind of a psychotic rage. Most of the strongman events came down to the stones. Like the
Yep.
Atlas stones, usually a 5 platform. The platforms get lower as you go. The stones get heavier as you go. They usually have to walk the first couple stones to the platform and then load them. And then as you get heavier, the stones get closer to the platform as the platforms get lower. So it was him versus Derek Poundstone, and at that point, an American hadn't won since Kazmaier, I believe, for decades. So Derek Poundstone, incredibly strong. He beat Marius and other federations. They had a big rivalry, and Marius gets the last stone before Derek Poundstone does, solidifies his victory, and he's so pumped up and excited. He's jumping around, and Derek has the last 450-pound stone in his lap, and he's about to, make his attempt to load it. And Marius is jumping around, and I guess he's in his kind of a frenzy. He starts like slapping Derek, like to almost like congratulate himself. He's like so excited. He's just like, yeah, you have to see it. I actually could pull that up, but like while Derek is trying to load the stone, he's getting slapped by Marius in his celebration. It was just the common courtesy is you when you're done with your stones, you go over and you cheer the other guy on. You're like, all right, Derek, come on. Like that's the camaraderie in strength sports that you don't see in many other sports, but not
He
Marius.
didn't give a
Marius,
fuck. He
yeah,
didn't give
no,
a
he could
fuck.
have pushed him over the way he was hitting him.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy.
Dude,
But
he was incredible. And I'll close it with this for the
yeah,
audience. There's a lot of money invested in overcomplicating training. Like,
yes,
everybody wants to sell you like my new super special program with the new super secret exercise. Almost always
yeah,
the super secret exercise was something that somebody was doing 40 years ago and we just kind of forgot about. Like, look, if Marius Pudzianowski is doing bodybuilding movements in the gym and Eddie Hall is doing bodybuilding movements in the gym, okay, like there's no reason to avoid doing these things. Like,
yeah,
and I actually say this to grapplers all the time, Ian, like, look, you build general strength in the gym, you
yeah,
develop specific strength on the mat, okay? Which means you're not like there's not functional muscle and non-functional muscle. That's a preposterous notion. Like, oh, I'm gonna
yes,
go do some leg presses and build some non-functional muscle. Like that's retarded. Like
yeah,
all muscle is inherently functional, but depending on how you use it in your sport. Yeah, if you are competing in the Paralympic bench press where you have no legs, yeah, maybe growing some muscle on your quads if you can. Not really a big deal. Not exactly functional muscle, okay? But
yeah,
like at the end of the day, if you can grow muscle in any number of ways in the gym, and if you put yourself in a position to use the strength that comes from that muscle on the mat, on the field, on the track, That is what we would call functional strength. That's it.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
that simple. You absolutely can build your body up to pick up insanely heavy atlas stones with machine rows and others. It's not the only
Oh
thing.
yeah.
It's not the only thing, but it carries over, you know. So whenever someone's like, "Oh yeah, it's in order to learn how to punch harder, you should only be doing rotational movements with a weighted glove," you're an idiot. Like, you know, get
Yeah.
your deadlift up, start to move a little bit better. Practice the mechanics of throwing the punch. Do some rotation, anti-rotation exercises. That's all you can do. Everything else is
Yeah.
developed in the skill arena, right? So
Mhm.
it's the base level of developing an athlete is always the same. Expose the athlete to as many different forms of movement as possible. Okay, something like soccer is great for developing like extreme leg dexterity because you can't use your arms. Okay, put them in a sport where they have to learn to throw something. Okay, put them in a sport where perhaps they're grappling, they're developing a certain kinesthetic awareness that involves being moved or not moving, and then keep them doing that, and then get them stronger. And that's how you build a strength athlete.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
not terribly complicated. You don't have your kid trying to bulk up from age 9. You know,
Yeah.
you're seeing more strength athletes now that they were great athletes in something else, and then when they get into their 20s, like, I'm going to put the size on, and it's a matter of time. Once I get to 350, you're fucked because I've got
Yeah.
the movement. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And that's like,
Okay.
what else could you say? But yeah, dude,
Yeah.
excellent choice. I totally forgot about the physique of the week. Excellent choice for the physique of the week. Marius is such a legend, and who wouldn't want to look like him?
Yeah. Looks like
Incredible
the
physique.
quintessential superhero action figure. Yeah.
But him and Klokov are the two strength
Yeah.
athletes that have that physique that you would kill to have. Those are the two
Yeah.
guys where you're like, so like such a good looking physique, and also you still look like a badass.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, like they've got both elements to it. Him and maybe we'll do Klokov next week. I'm gonna put that
Okay.
thought in my head
Cool.
here. All right,
Yeah.
man. Anything you want to say to the audience, Mr. DiGiacomo?
Love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Stay safe. We love you. It's getting crazy out there. Focus on your family. Focus on the things that you can control. Have a good one.